pressure off the edge, and it's intercepted. D'Angelo Pond roll out the big red carpet. Touchdown, Indiana.
It's time for the big red carpet. Here's your host, Rhett Lewis.
Want to know. Win is a win is a win is a win is a win. Let us not forget. Let us not take for granted every win along the way. Here, welcome everybody. Great to have you with us on this, the Big Red Carpet, episode number 2, our first after a game. I am Rhett Lewis, excited to be back here with you as part of the Back Home Network, here with you each and every Monday throughout the season. And this Monday feels good. I don't care that the score may not have been as impressive as people wanted it to be. Maybe those on the external side of Bloomington and of Indiana football fandom, that's okay. That is okay. There's so much in this game to get to, and we're going to take you through all of it here. We will have a little preview of Kennesaw State Week 2 coming up for you as well. We'll also chat a little bit, some big picture thoughts from the Big Ten week that was, and say hello to our friends. Nathan going to join us as part of our production team today with some thoughts, question, comment, action a little bit later in the show. We're going to do that for you each and every week. So be sure to tune in and hit us up on social media. You can find me at Rhett NFL. It is, that side of the screen. I'm not a weatherman. Okay, let's chat here because I mentioned to you that I'm fired up. And so what does that really entail? Well, it's kind of layered here, right? It's a little bit nuanced, and I know you'll follow along with me here. Sure, like you guys, probably at times very disappointed, right? At times, really excited. But mostly because of that, encouraged. This had all the makings of a UCLA, Michigan State from a year ago type of dominating effort from Indiana. Just didn't put it all together. Now, are you going to have to be way better to beat Oregon at Autzen Stadium in Eugene, to beat Penn State in Happy Valley at Beaver Stadium? Yes, absolutely. But that's why we play these games. You have these opportunities now to put some mistakes on tape and go in and correct them. And let's just rattle off a few of these things that went the wrong way for Indiana in this game. Dropped a touchdown, overthrew a touchdown, fumbled going in for a score, multiple issues inside the 10 on goal-to-go situations, stopped short on 4th down a couple of times. Crazy scheme run on the first play from scrimmage that ODU had that didn't quite see that much leading into this game. Some week 1 type of stuff in that regard. You take away the 2 explosive QB runs, and I get it. You can't just do that. Even if you take away one of them, it is a dominant defensive effort. On the whole, you take away those 2 explosive runs, it's 161 yards from plays 2 to 44 in this game. Our defense was only on the field for 45 plays. From plays 2 to 44, they were dominant, absolutely dominant. There was no threat from ODU in the pass game here, and I think that has a lot to say about pressure, has a lot to say about scheme, has a lot to say about some veterans in the back end like Amari Farrell and D'Angelo Pons. We'll get to that in a little bit as well. But you throw all that together, and ultimately what I'm saying is I am encouraged by where this team can now go, that we have seen some of these mistakes, some of these shortcomings and mishaps. Remember, Indiana did not trail in a game last year until the Ohio State game. They come out of the gates and you're down 7-0 in a season that has had more hype and more expectation than we've ever seen before. And it's 75 yards to the house, and you're like shell-shocked, 75 yards to the house, shell-shocked, and it's you're down 7-0. You're like, what? But the way this team bounced back immediately, that next drive from the offense, I thought was a great response. And we'll get more into the defensive, scheme stuff and some of the things that since I've watched the game back on tape a couple of times now, just taking a look at this. I'm also going to give you a couple of guys, some of the newcomers that you should be encouraged by. I'll have that for you here coming up in a little bit. But let's dig into some of the things that we liked about this game. I think the things that we didn't like were pretty dang obvious, right? And I'll get into why some of those things happened as well. But let's talk about some of the things that we did like. Run game, right? Lost 20 rushing touchdowns from a year ago when Tyson Lawton and when Justice Ellison, moved on. Justice now still part of the program, but on the coaching side. I thought Roman Hemby and Kaelon Black were really good in this game. Like really good. I think the first run on offense, the first play really kind of set a tone for me. You get Bray Lynch coming in on a pull from his right guard spot, a nice little kick out there. And you saw Kaelon Black read it perfectly. Everyone did their job essentially to perfection there. Omar Cooper is coming in from his spot to make a block from the perimeter to help, and Elijah Surratt gets even a little bit more of a piece of his guy. And this thing might be going the distance on the first play from scrimmage. So then you did actually get an explosive play from Kaelon Black in which Khalil Benson, welcome back, by the way, great to have that big, powerful man over on the right side of this offensive line. Again, he essentially took 3 dudes out on that Kaelon Black run. One of them was a pancake and then essentially caught up 2 other dudes in the wash on that one, which allowed Kaelon to get the edge. And by the way, who was downfield racing to get the final block, which he did. It just, Kaelon didn't quite get to the point where he needed the final block. But Omar Cooper, again, like those little things are really, really important to the overall success of this offense down the stretch. And you saw some of those little things that can become big impacts down the stretch. So I thought that was really important. So Kaelon Black and Roman Hemby were really good. I don't know about you guys, but I remember last year really loving like the downhill nature of the way that Kaelon runs, right? The aggressive nature of the way that he kind of gets after it, doesn't mess around. This isn't a running back that's like, let me kind of, patiently bide my time, like that Le'Veon Bell type of style when he was in the NFL and at Michigan State. Like, didn't need that. This was a downhill, hard-hitting run game, and I think Indiana is really going to benefit from having that, which brings you to the O-line. The offensive line, as it stood, was Pat Coogan in the center, right in the middle. It was Bray Lynch on the right side, on the right guard spot. Khalil Benson at right tackle. Left guard was Drew Evans. Left tackle Carter Smith. I think they had toyed around with some combinations throughout training camp. I know Bray Lynch was a little bit banged up. So Zen Michalski from Ohio State was in there. Only played 1 snap in this game. So I think you really liked what you have there. And for the most part, it was Bray Lynch and Drew Evans at the guard spots last year, right? So the fact that Drew Evans is healthy, Bray Lynch is healthy, and those 2 guys have some continuity, especially on the left side. Evans and Carter Smith, feeling good with each other. And I thought Pat Coogan played really well. Kind of what you expected from a player with that type of experience and high level, competition. Obviously playing at Notre Dame and playing into the national championship game a year ago. I thought that group was really good. And as Kurt Signetti mentioned a few times this offseason, feels like that unit can be the strength of the team. And then we have the depth, right? Zen Michalski is able to jump in there, at right guard or right tackle if he has to. And so like there's a lot to like about that group up front, what they can do continuing to move forward. So love the run game, love what the offensive line did there. I thought seeing EJ Williams targeted early and often was so good to see, right? I think there was great expectation when he came here as a, former extremely highly recruited guy out of high school, goes to Clemson, doesn't quite find it there, comes here, he just can't stay healthy. Barely is on the field. I mean, I feel like the last time we saw him in meaningful snaps for this team was like week 2, 2023 against Indiana State when he actually got hurt. And then we didn't really see him for the rest of the year. Saw him very sparingly last year. This has got the makings of something really good too. I think mostly you saw him on some shorter to intermediate type stuff in this game. I think there's more explosiveness in his game that's going to be available as well from the outside. Didn't see Elijah Surratt a bunch, right? And I think that certainly didn't see him at all in the first half in terms of targets and catches. But then, got his 3 for 44. That's going to come. I mentioned, and I'll hit this now while we're at it, but the issues inside the 10-yard line, right? Some of this is difficult because it's week 1. And I think there was some things that were thrown at this Indiana offense and this offensive line in particular that maybe they hadn't seen or hadn't repped a bunch going into it. That happens in every week 1. How do you respond to it? Right. And that's something they're going to have to work through and work forward to next week and to the rest of the season. I think they'll get a lot better at it. I don't imagine, Bob Bostad is going to let that type of play just linger here. Same for Kurt Signetti and Mike Shanahan. But I brought up Surratt's name because on that fourth down play, Fernando chooses to work the right side of the field. Not exactly sure why he ended up choosing the right side. Might have been the first option here. But I think he works his way back to the left side of the field because Elijah Surratt comes in motion across the formation, lines up outside. I think it was Omar Cooper, and then essentially runs a rub route inside. And he's got inside leverage on the DB that's essentially switches off to guard him. That's a touchdown. He puts that out in front of Surratt. That's a touchdown in my book. Now, should they have scored on any number of those running plays down inside the 5 before that fourth down? Probably so. And, I think Khalil Benson got beat once inside. I just think that there is some nuance to short yardage and goal line that can sometimes take some time to work out, especially when you're not taking a ton of live reps in the preseason. That is an area of the game that requires live reps. And now you got a lot of them on tape. Indiana had 29 plays in the red area, 29 plays inside the 20-yard line of Old Dominion. They were moving the football. So again, you come back to some of the miscues there, 3 times inside the 10 that you don't come away with a touchdown. 2 out of 3 you'd expect in those types of scenarios. That puts more points on the board. Obviously, we were able to connect on a field goal one of those times, missed on the fourth down one of those times. And then we had another time inside the 20 where Lee Beebe just coughs it up going in. And, you just hang on to the football there. You're kicking 3 no matter what. And as good as Nico is in that short and intermediate range, I mean, that's a sure thing field goal too. So again, you start putting all this together and you're like, this is settle, right? It's going to be all right. And so that's why I'm encouraged here, because you've got this type of stuff on tape that you can now go and correct. So much of this stuff is correctable. It's not like you were beaten physically a bunch of times in this game where now you're like, whoa, we got to really, go back to the drawing board. It wasn't that type of thing. So I mentioned Surratt there. I think we're going to see a lot more of Elijah Surratt in games coming forward. Did see Bond get his first catch, which was cool. Probably could have had another. I think you're going to see more of Charlie Becker moving forward. But Omar Cooper, Omar almost had that. Should have. It was a beautifully thrown ball by Fernando right in the breadbasket, just dropped it. And then there was another one right to Omar that Fernando did overthrow. Connect on one of those, and you're feeling differently about that game afterwards, about the offense, about Fernando's performance there. Thought the tight ends played a bunch. Stays and Nowakowski both played a bunch, and I think those guys are going to be really valuable assets, especially in the run game. And I think you'll see them more often in the pass game as we kind of go forward here. So let's get to Fernando. Numbers don't wow you, right? And that's okay. I think back to the opener last year at FIU and at home versus FIU. I don't remember being overly impressed with Curtis Rourke that day either. But I remember each week things got better. Each week he got more comfortable. Each week he built more confidence. And that's why you saw some of those huge games down the stretch. This is an offense that you're not just going to snap your fingers and understand. You're not just going to snap your fingers and just be totally confident where your eyes are supposed to go and, where that read is supposed to be. And so this is an offense and a quarterback and a scheme where you're going to see these guys grow together moving forward, and it's going to get better. So I'm excited about that part for Fernando. I think you did see what was encouraging is the legs, the mobility. I thought was a lot better than what we had become accustomed to this last year. Speaking of QB mobility, one more tease coming up. Welcome back, Dexter Williams, to the Rock next week. So we'll get to Dex here in just a second. So Fernando up and down, but I think you'll start to see that consistency smooth out here moving forward. So overall, offensively, felt pretty good about that. Let's get to the defense here a little bit. I mentioned, you take out the explosive runs, you're talking about a dominant effort defensively. You can't take out, and you got to tip your cap. That's a well-coached Old Dominion team. They had a great scheme lined up. And basically what happened, and this can get a little bit inside football here for you, but on the first play, a lot of times when you're running a read option, you're going to make that read off one of the edge defenders. So what happened in this case, they motioned that fullback over late, and they essentially block the edge defender and leave Hosea Wheeler, the 3-tech, the inside defensive tackle, free. And that's the player that gets the read. That's the key, right? And so ODU reads off Hosea Wheeler, and he follows the outside zone down there, leaving this huge hole to scamper right through. And, Lou Moore's in a tough spot there as the free safety. He's got to fill that gap. He's unable to make the play, just didn't see it fast enough to close the space down. And that's why that thing went out the gate for 75 yards. But that's a play, that midline read option, you see usually more often in like a service academy offense, like a Navy, Army. Chip Kelly's done it in the past for UCLA a little bit, but it's not that often you see it tied to an outside zone type of run, which is the run action that went off to the defense's right side and then allowed the quarterback to pull it and take it the distance. So hats off, right? They called that same play 12 plays later, and Lou Moore did fill it. I think Wyatt got held on that play, and otherwise it would have been a tackle for no gain or tackle for loss, but they ended up getting 9 yards out of it. But it didn't go for 75, didn't go for an explosive. So Coach Haynes got it coached up, and it looked a lot better moving forward. And then the last play, you heard Coach Stig mention it if you saw the news conference earlier today. Wyatt just bites on the quarterback, where he's got his responsibility is to have the back, and then this thing's getting stopped in the backfield. So one good scheme, just got beat by it. That does not happen often with Brian Haynes. They'll rep that stuff moving forward and be more prepared for it. And then on the last play, the last explosive, it's just a mental error, and they'll figure out a way to be better on that moving forward the more they rep it as well. So those are the two explosives. In between, as I mentioned, it was a dominant effort. This was a game where you were going to be tested with the wide splits of the receivers and really narrow splits of the offensive line. So a lot of times you saw Indiana condense down their defensive front. And even, a few times you saw a 3-3 type of look, 3 defensive linemen, and then you saw 3 linebackers. So you saw Aiden Fisher, Elijah Hardy, and Isaiah Jones all out there at the same time, which gives Indiana some increased speed out there, especially on the second level. But for the defense and up front, I think Hosea Wheeler really showed that he can be a player with some dominance moving forward from the defensive tackle spot. I don't know. Does he get to CJ West level? I don't know. But Hosea Wheeler made a couple of plays in this game that I think you should be really excited about. He made one that didn't really amount to much, but he slips the center, and the quarterback is running away from him to the opposite side of him, and he makes this kind of runs the hoop, as the defensive coaches say, and turns on a dime and is able to come back from behind and make a tackle. Showcase some real athleticism there. So excited for what Hosea Wheeler can do. And then we saw some newcomers make some impacts in this one. Obviously, Stephen Daly, the Kent State transfer, and then Wyatt from Maryland, I thought were really good in this one. And there were some flashes that you really kind of hope become more consistent moving forward. So first off, early on, I thought Wyatt was really good with his effort on the backside of a bunch of plays, just trailing, nonstop motor, was able to pick off a couple of plays, get running back from behind a couple of times, got the quarterback from behind a couple of times, which was really encouraging on that front. I think he'll be a player. Kellen Wyatt will be a player that sees the field quite a bit, but we'll see some of that rotation. I think this scheme was just a little bit there were some different scheme wrinkles when you were going against Old Dominion that probably led to some personnel groupings that maybe looked a little bit different. Moving forward, you'll see probably more of a 4-down front, but still, I love the options that Brian Haynes now has to use that 3-3 look, right, and bring a little bit more speed into the game on the second level when you bring that third linebacker in. And on that note, love the way that Elijah Hardy and Isaiah Jones played next to Aiden Fisher. That was encouraging. I think, Ro Hardy had a really nice deflection on a ball and a well-timed jump. He was around the football a bunch. Isaiah Jones showed that he can be really useful as a blitzer. I thought he got through a couple of times, eyes up, and he probably, is able to make another sack or two. I think he did end up getting credit for the one sack that Indiana did have. I didn't actually track all the specific defensive stats, but when watching the tape, I thought that stood out to me for Isaiah Jones. So those two guys were excellent. Would like to see a little bit more moving forward from Lou Moore and a little bit more moving forward from Devin Boykin. I think there's room for growth there with those two guys. Boykin playing a little bit in that rover spot. Again, it looked a little bit different with some of the configuration that Old Dominion ran out there and some of their personnel groupings and formations. So it didn't maybe look as traditional as maybe you saw from Indiana's defense a year ago, but I think they'll get better. I thought a couple of things were kind of as advertised. D'Angelo Pons and Aiden Fisher and Amari Farrell. Right, Mari ended up with the pick. Pons ended up with the pick as well, as did Lou Moore. But those three guys, Fisher, Farrell, and Pons, I thought that's what you expect from guys who have been in the system, played in the system a bunch. They were really good, right? Amari, was just, he's so good back there in that safety spot. I think that was such a great move from him when he was, when he moved off the rover spot and a little bit back deep. So those three guys were great. I still think there's another level to Mikhail Kamara's game. For as good and talented as he is, I think the more consistently you see, that effort from him that creates some of those flash plays that you love, the more dominant he is going to become. And I think the best is still yet to come from Mikhail Kamara, and that's kind of scary to think about. For as good as he was a year ago, I think he's got another level to his game that I really think and hope that he's going to get there before this year is done. So those are some things to think about from the defensive side of the ball. Special teams, obviously, was awesome to see Brady get the 91-yard punt return for a score. Nico, the 52-yarder just hit the crossbar. I think that's probably where his range is anyway. So otherwise, totally satisfied. I think, obviously the punt return is the headline, but overall felt pretty good about where special teams ended up in this game. All right. So that's kind of a recap of week one. When we come back, we'll get a brief look ahead to week two, take some questions and comments from our friends behind the proverbial glass here on Big Red Carpet, and take a quick whip around through the Big Ten Conference right after this.
Hoosier Nation, are you tired of the same old takes? Say hello to Crimson Cast. Hosted by Galen Clavio and Scott Caulfield, they serve up sharp analysis, real talk, and just enough sarcasm to keep things interesting. Game previews? Check. Instant reactions? Double check. History lessons that make even our losses worth remembering? You bet. So whether you're tailgating at Memorial Stadium, pacing around Assembly Hall, or just avoiding Purdue fans, Crimson Cast has you covered. Search Crimson Cast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and join the conversation today.
Love our friends Crimson Cast. Galen and Scott, great job. And you can catch their latest recap of this win as well on the Back Home Network, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, and so many others. Okay. Quick look ahead to Kennesaw. Obviously, welcome back Dexter Williams. That's the headline here, right? So dangerous with his feet and with his mobility. And after what we saw this last week against Old Dominion, that will be a major emphasis this week in practice. The thing that you want is to be able to shut down that run and force Dexter and Kennesaw to throw the ball. Dex, as we have seen, for as much as we loved him while he was here, the accuracy was an issue consistently. He was 12 of 33 in this game. That's not winning football through the air. So that is an emphasis here. stop the run, shut it down, snuff it out, make them go to the air. I think we'll see a bunch of takeaways in this game. Now, look, they gave Wake Forest everything they could handle. Ended up losing by a point, but had a chance at the very end to go down and kick a field goal for the win. I thought honestly they got jobbed. I thought there should have been a roughing or potential targeting call against Dex at the very end on I think it was a third down play where he slid down and still got hit, and they did not call it, did not throw the flag. So something to think about. Gabriel Binyard is their number one receiver. He's really the main dude there to watch from a pass game perspective in the run game, in the pass game from Dexter Williams. Dex is a big factor in the run game. They're going to spread. They got a couple of different guys that can tote the rock there. But again, the read option stuff, better believe they're going to test Indiana on some of the things that ODU had success with. So keep that in mind as you're watching Kennesaw State. And then defensively, look, you got to be really good on third down against this team. Wake Forest was not. Wake was 6 of 17 for third down. That's not winning football. Indiana's got to be much better on third down to sustain drives and give yourself more opportunities to control the game, control the clock, and then find those chunk plays, of course. But the more sustained drives you have, the better opportunity you're going to have to put points on the board and not waste those possessions. So that, of course, is our quick look ahead to Kennesaw State. It's really all about Dexter Williams. These will get a little bit more in depth as we get into conference play, which, of course, is week 4 against Illinois. I'm going to be in Bloomington for that game. Hopefully you got some cool stuff coming for you associated with the big red carpet ahead of that week. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk quickly about around the Big Ten. I think biggest disappointment in this one was in this week for the Big Ten. I think you were probably talking about Northwestern just getting shut down and beat up against Tulane. That was pretty ugly. Billy Edwards for Wisconsin, their transfer quarterback, who one time thought might be coming to Indiana, ended up at Wisconsin. Got hurt very early, and you're thinking, oh my, here it goes all over again for Wisconsin with the quarterback injuries. They end up shutting out Miami of Ohio, finished it out just fine. The other ones to think about before we get to the big one, Purdue with a shutout of Ball State. Anytime you shut out an opponent, don't care who they are, it's pretty impressive. That's all we'll say about that, though. So Northwestern, really the only team outside of the traditional Big Ten to take the L. The expansion teams, USC, I was at that game, was extremely impressive. 73 points. They had 6 touchdowns from 6 different players, including a defensive touchdown in the first half alone. Starters didn't even play in the second half. UCLA was very disappointing. And I am a little bit surprised they were not more competitive in this game. Now, Nico Iamaleava comes in late through spring, after spring ball. Didn't have as much time with Tino Sinceri, who, we love for his time here a year ago. I love Tino as a dude. I think he's going to be a great coach. He is a great coach, but I think he's going to be a great play caller. They just probably need some time to work this thing out between, figuring out what Nico needs, what's best for the offense, and their path forward. But UCLA got thumped at home, 43-10. All right, buried the lead. Biggest game of the week in the Big Ten was obviously Ohio State, Texas. Arch Manning, tough one. Certainly showed some flash for, that as the reason behind the hype. But think about how difficult it might have been to go up against a Matt Patricia NFL-style offense, very multiple, without having any real tape on it going into the season. You've never seen what a Matt Patricia defense looks like at Ohio State or in the college game until you take that first snap. You can prepare for a lot of it, but they are, the Matt Patricia, Bill Belichick style was they were going to be very different week to week. And so for a quarterback making, very early in his starting tenure there at Texas, to have to deal with that kind of defense and that kind of road environment, I'm going to give him a little bit of grace. But that said, Ohio State's really good. They're still really good. They're going to have some work to do, with Julian Sayin and Brian Hartline and getting that offense rolling. Again, Texas's defense is really good. But I come away with that thinking no differently about Ohio State's ability to repeat or to get to a national championship game. So that's what I thought there. Just quick thoughts on the Big Ten as a whole. All right, let's bring in Nathan. Nathan, what was your take on the IU game and the win against ODU, pushing the record to 1-0 to start this season? And any questions, comments you have about the game? What's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going? My first of all, I think Kurt Signetti said it best. This is a pedestrian win.
Yeah, great.
It's not how you wanted to start the year. It's certainly not how you wanted to come back out of the college football playoff. That said, there was a lot of positives coming out of this game, especially, as you mentioned, the running back committee. I was really impressed with Roman Hemby and Kaelon Black. My first question to you would be, do you think they should stick to that committee approach or hand off the reins more so to Roman Hemby and Kaelon Black and kind of cut back on the trio aspect?
Yeah, that happened a little bit last year, right? It did kind of morph into a Tyson Lott and Justice Ellison dominant run game where Kaelon Black was spelling minimally and then playing late in games if the score was out of hand, and then even more infrequently, was Elijah Green getting carries. I think they like Lee Beebe. I think you'd have seen him more if not for that fumble very early on in this game. I'm glad they were able to, get him back in and kind of get that confidence up. I think the only way this really becomes the two-man show, and Beebe, I think, was banged up a little bit in camp. So the more comfortable and confident they get with him, I think he'll have his opportunities. But if turnovers are a consistent issue, it will become a two-man deal for sure. But I think right now you're still going to see, I would say it's probably more like 45 to 45%, 35% Black and Hemby, and then like 20%, BB at that point, and until we get a couple more games under our belt. But that's a good question, Nathan. You got anything else?
Yeah, I think one of the most impressive aspects of the win was how effectively the Indiana defense was able to counter the passing attack. Yeah. Colton Joseph, he had the two big runs, but throwing the ball, he threw it 22 times and only came away with 96 passing yards. But I think there's also a little bit of a cause for concern. Obviously, we found out Bryson Bonds is going to be out for the season. Lewis Moore is still dealing with that lawsuit. We're not entirely sure if he's going to be available all year. Who do you think is sort of the next man up for the defensive backs if those two?
Well, and I think that's a great question, Nathan. I think, one of the things, that I mentioned earlier is that we need more from Boykin. Transferred in from NC State. Remember, didn't play a year ago, so still probably getting his sea legs under him a little bit. We need a lot more from Boykin and need more from Lou Moore. And for as long as we got him, and I feel pretty good about that right now. But they've got to step up. And Amari Farrell's got to continue to elevate his game. But beyond that, I think this is kind of the group who we were going to be talking about here. I don't think that there's anybody else coming up from beyond, that group that's really going to change things unless Byron Baldwin, comes back from what's ailing him, as Kurt Signetti mentioned day to day. I think that's going to be a really important piece because I think it'll allow Coach Haynes to put guys more in a position of where they can help the team. I think you're trying to get your best five guys out there right now. And I think, when Baldwin comes back and gives this team another option to kind of throw in there, I think you can start to see some guys maybe settle into some, maybe tweak some roles a little bit and find a little bit more production from that back end. But what I do want to say is I love the pressure that we saw a lot of times from Daly, from Wyatt, from Kamara, from Wheeler, and then on those blitzes that we see from Coach Haynes, like as I mentioned, Isaiah Jones and Aiden Fisher had a couple big hits, on ODU. So I'm okay with it right now. I think it is something to monitor, though. Good question, Nathan.
Well, Signetti said it was a pedestrian win, but he also said never to apologize for a win.
That's right. So that's right.
And then we're not apologizing. 1-0.
Yeah.
No reason to panic.
No doubt. Those are two great questions, Nathan. Appreciate you, man. And again, if you guys want to jump back in with your questions, hit me up on X at Rhett NFL. And we'll get this thing rolling and hopefully have some live shows for you coming up a little bit down the road once we get our legs underneath us here and stabilize this big red carpet. So we appreciate you for being along here with us. Episode 2 now in the books. Reminder to rate, review, subscribe. We appreciate the support. That allow us to do some cool things for you as we go forward this season. So for Galen Clavio, for Nathan, for Pete, we appreciate you guys for being with us, and we'll catch up with you next week, hopefully after we talk about the Hoosiers going 2-0.